All right. Well, to officially kick us off, welcome to our expert panel on software localization. I'm going to hand it over to Sophia for introduction.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Kate. And yeah, hi to everyone who's joined the webinar. Hello to those who might be watching the recording later on. My name is Sophia Lindblad. I'm a Customer Success Manager here at Braze. I actually lead the EMEA team, so the European team of Customer Success Managers. And yeah, I'm really excited to be here today to talk to two expert speakers, two of our lovely guests that we have about software localization. I've prepared some questions and then we will have some time for audience Q&A after the fact. But before we get into the questions, let's do a round of introductions so that our lovely speakers today can introduce themselves, say a few words about who they are, what their company is doing, what their role is, and what they do in their day-to-day. So yeah, maybe Ketty, you would like to start.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Sophia and Kate. It's really nice to be here. My name is Ketty Tirido. I'm a localization manager at Zendesk. Zendesk is a customer support software. And I have been in the company for 5 years. And prior to that, I worked in on the vendor side in an LSP and on the client side in a marketing agency, so handling marketing material before landing on software localization.
Thank you very much. Deborah, over to you.
Hi, everyone. I'm very excited to be here as well, so thank you very much. So I'm Deborah Cohen. I'm Head of Localization at AppsFlyer. We are a platform that we provide the mobile analytics and attribution. I've been working in the marketing department for now 6 years, overseeing all the localization efforts within the company. And I'm very, very excited to be here and discuss further with all of you.
Many thanks. Yeah, it's great to have such nice speakers on board for today, for this afternoon or morning, depending on where you're based. I've prepared, like I said, I've prepared some questions. I'd love to find out a little bit more, get some insights and some knowledge from you. So I would just kick it off. My first question is kind of right back at the beginning. What role does software localization play in actually ensuring that you have successful product and that you have success with the product? That goes into also, the process that you have in place. Why is it important and why is it of value to have a robust localization process in place when it comes to software localization? Not the shortest and snappiest of questions, but there's so much to unpackage there. So yeah, perhaps Ketty, I'll come to you first. What do you see?
Well, the things that come in mind when we talk about localizing a product, and of course, in this case, software localization, is expanding the company reach because that localizing opens up to many more opportunities. It's increasing brand awareness and just making the product and the company known out there. And then that should translate normally in higher sales, so bigger revenue for companies and also a diversified user base. Setting up a structured, a very precise process will ensure that localization is a durable, sustainable step and process within the business. So yeah, to summarize, the importance is that of course it will expand the company reach and increase sale and visibility, and structuring the process. It's important to make it durable and sustainable in the long run.
Absolutely, yeah. Deborah, would you agree?
I couldn't agree more with Ketty with what she said. She actually stole my words here, but it is true. It's essential nowadays. It's like it's crucial if we want to penetrate new markets, if we want to be different, if we want to also stand out from the competitors as well. The moment that you show that you're localizing and you're adjusting, your product and your software into as many languages and regions as possible, that's a big win-win for the company, right? Not to mention that, the retention rate is going to be better. You're going to increase your ROI. the multiple benefits into localizing, not just, you know, the software, also like many different assets. But specifically, you know, I think it's very, very important. The moment that you improve the UX as well, it's kind of like giving some sort of like people respect you more, and you build some sort of like trust and loyalty with your clients. It's kind of like they will trust you to buy your product if they see that you speak in their language, if you see what I mean. So there are only benefits. And I think, you know, all the companies, no matter what size, if they're already, you know, dealing with different regions and they have clients in different parts of the world, not just from the English-speaking countries, it's something to consider and not to forget about it and have it as a main priority.
Absolutely, very good points that you've raised there, and you know, lots of things to consider. I can imagine that that's not without its challenges as well. So I'll come back to you, Deborah, first. So what kind of challenges have you come across in your localization process so far?
Challenges, they're everywhere. And specifically for me, I've been in the company for 6 years, and I have to say that every year it's a different challenge. If we start from the latest one, let's focus on AI and the way how, you know, this new technology is kind of affecting our industry, not only, you know, like any organization, but also like on the TMS side, on the vendor side, LSP agencies, translation agencies, everyone has been affected to this. Very important for all of us to be able to be agile and kind of like adjust to the new situation and to the new technologies that we need to make sure that we're utilizing as best as possible. So I think that is like one of the biggest challenges like today. Something else that I want to point out here is the fact that if you don't have the right TMS, that also can cause you a lot of headaches. So making sure that you have a good, you know, translation management system in place, you know, having done your research in advance, making sure that, you know, this is like fitting the, you know, your needs and your what your company actually requires. That's also like super important. And then I would mention a third one as well, if you allow me, if I have time. Quality of translation is a big topic here, because it doesn't matter like how you approach the way you're working. There's so many like different models that you can work on, right? You can either like choose to have an in-house team, you can either work with vendors, with an external translation agency. No matter like what model you decide, which all of them are legit and they are like completely fine. Making sure that the quality is up to your standard and the quality is, you know, accurate enough for your product and for your selling, it's essential. And this is something that is very tricky depending on like which model you are adopting within the organization. So these are my 3 main points that I will highlight.
Thank you. Same question for Katie. Have you encountered similar challenges or any others that we can add to the list?
Yeah, definitely from a process perspective, these are all the biggest challenges. From a working perspective, from like a day-to-day perspective, of course, I echo Deborah on quality. And sometimes I would like to add also that depending on who are your stakeholders, is also the ambiguity around quality, because quality doesn't mean the same. We don't all talk about quality referring to the same, like we don't have the same expectations. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. So it's also it's managing those expectations around quality. If we're buying a specific service or if we are providing a specific service, we cannot expect the deliverables of a service that has a higher cost, for instance, or that would require a longer period of time to deliver. And this kind of segues into the next challenge, which is time constraints. I think it's very, very common in the localization industry to use this phrase that what's the deadline yesterday, because it's real. Very often, time to market and delivery of translation has to happen quick, and sometimes without realizing that what's going to impact is not just quality, but also all those steps that should be there, should be taken, should be put in place. And then when it comes to software localization, is poor internationalization implementation. So, you know, when the product is not thought to be localized, that gives you a lot of challenges from, like, you know, string extraction to presence of placeholders, concatenation, technical issues that are going to be way more time-consuming and costly to address at a later stage.
Yeah, you raised a very good point there. Actually, I'd like to go into that a little bit deeper, because, you know, all of these things that you've raised about time to market, challenging, working with other teams, making sure that the actual product itself is localization ready. Typically, or often in the past at least, localization has been tackled kind of as a last stage of the process. It's right at the end, almost. I think I've heard the term afterthought be used in the context of, you know, the localization part of the product. Obviously, we're in the localization industry. We have a slightly different opinion of where localization should begin, where it should sit in the process. What issues do you see with actually tackling the localization part at the end of the process? I think, Katie, you raised a few points there about time to market and quality challenges. So I'll come back to you for that one. Well, I'll come to you first, I should say. Yep.
So yeah, challenges with the actual content. It could be from a technical point of view, as I was explaining before. So in the case of software where strings are not extracted, or there could be not the right encoding is used, there are pluralization issues or concatenation issues. And then from a linguistic perspective, the lack of context. So of course, the strings can be very synthetic, very short. So if we don't provide linguists with the right means to localize, so it could be visual aid, or it could be like explanation as to where a particular piece of content is going to be used and how. And then very often, so that's from a translation perspective, but then very often sometimes there's not enough time to test. Because translation is just one part of software localization. Testing has to happen accurately and thoroughly in other languages to ensure that you deliver the same level of service and quality that you sell, that you deliver in English. And yeah, these are the things that come to mind.
Mm-hmm. Same question also then for Deborah. Have you encountered issues? What issues could you foresee with, you know, leaving localization or leaving the translation components to the end? And I suppose for both of you then, after that, at what stage of the process do you think localization should be considered?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely another challenge here. The fact that, you know, localization is kind of always the last part of the chain. You know, like if you work in a factory and you are like the last part of the chain, it's always an issue here. There are many negative sides of this way of working, because not only you're wasting time, you know, you started working on a new project, you upload the content already on your TMS, the team is already like working on it. Sometimes there are like last minute changes, and people also like make changes which cost you not just money. If you're using like some vendors, it's also going to cost you money to send the translation back again. It's also going to delay the project, the quality, like Katie mentioned before, the quality of the translation might not be at its best because, you know, we don't have enough time to do the proper QA. Yeah, these are things that I think every single company should take into consideration whenever you're starting a new project. And going back to the second question, it is very important to align and to make sure that you're planning in advance, not just on the localization side, in my case, in the marketing department, for example, we need to align. All the stakeholders have to have a kickoff meeting at the beginning of the project, understanding what are going to be the main assets, what's going to be the format, is this going to be localization friendly? There's so many questions that they need to be answered at the very beginning of the project to make sure that then when it gets to us, because by the end of the day, will get to us in a later stage, we want to make sure that we're ready, and we want to make sure that we're going to be professional enough to deliver like we should. And for that, there are many different things that we can do, such as, having these kickoff meetings, making sure the localization is always taken into consideration, aligning on the what's the strategy behind the whatever project we are working on. And I think, communication is key here. The moment that you are aligning and the moment that you are making sure that everyone is synchronized, everyone knows what they're doing, everyone understands also what their responsibilities and roles are, because sometimes, they can, mix between each other. Sometimes localization ends up doing a lot of the operations work that maybe someone else should be doing, or even some technical stuff from the dev team ends up, being taken care of by the localization team. So there's so many different things that can be done, and I think communication should be the key here of how to solve this issue in general.
Yeah, absolutely. And you also touched there upon, cross-team collaboration, being aligned in the beginning. All of that speaks, at least to me, speaks towards having a process that at the end of the day is able to scale too, because that's, what we talked about with the first question in the beginning. It's about, increasing reach, increasing adoption, and promoting growth essentially, right, through the successful localization of the software product. So when it comes to scalability, localizing at scale and doing that in an efficient way, what are some important considerations? I don't know, it could be 2, 3, 4. If you have more, then please share them. I'm sure the audience will be delighted also to hear that. But yeah, some of your top considerations when it comes to scalability. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Katie, maybe you would like to go first with that one.
Sure. So I think the most important thing is really making sure that localization gets a seat at the table, and that it's clear how long it will take to localize properly. It's clear to all the stakeholders. So identifying objectives and putting together a good planning, it's essential. A good planning that is not just, that it doesn't have to be understood just within the localization team, but that is acknowledged by the entire team, the entire company, so that really localization is considered and it's part of the process, and it's a non-compromisable part of the process. Because once we decide to localize and to sell the product in other markets, we cannot rush translation. It's just not, well, actually localization is just not possible. So identifying objectives, planning, it's essential. And also, I would say gathering data once the process has been done, showing how localizing, well, actually showing it along the way as well, how localizing has improved the ROI, how it has boosted the company awareness out there, right? And sorry, I do have another one. And educating, it's really important. I think we spend a very large part of our job educating and explaining what are the different steps and why it's needed, and why we're doing things in a certain way.
I see you nodding there, Deborah. You have shared the same point.
Do you know what? I love having these discussions because we speak in the same language. We all go through the same things, and we cannot agree more with what everyone is sharing here. For me specifically, when it comes to localization, there are, of course, like what Katie mentioned, she has a lot of experience, and everything she's saying is fantastic. I want to add a few more things on my end. Like when it comes to localization, there are three main pillars, right? If you want the localization machine factory, like I call it, to work, you need to have like three main things. And the first one is like the technology side of it, you know, to have a strong and robust, you know, TMS in our case, you know, especially if you have different connectors, if you're using different platforms, like it's my case. You know, that's the way of like automating everything, making sure that things are going to be fast and no copy paste work like people used to work once upon a time, right? We've all been there. I'm sure there are still companies here. I'm sure there will be people in the audience that they still work with a Word document.
So spreadsheets too. Yeah.
Spreadsheets, you know, you name it, right? So automation is super, super important on the technology side. Number two, processes, because yes, you can have an amazing TMS that it's, you know, leveraging everything you're doing and having your translation memory and so on. But if you don't have the right workflows and processes, there's not much you can do about it, right? And then the third one, super duper important, is to have the resources. And again, this is up to the company, whether you want to, whether you decide to do it externally, internally, this is really up to the organization. But these are the three main things that make the machine, the factory work, right? So yeah, that's my thought about that.
I really want to stress the importance of the tool and the right linguists and vendors, whether you have linguists in-house or vendors, you have to, without them, it doesn't work. You just cannot deliver what you need to. So you really have to be able to rely on who's actually doing the work, and the technology just helps massively.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so important, and it should fit in, like also Deborah mentioned, right? Fit into the process that you have in place and complement that process with, I mean, ideally being almost second nature, invisible. You have the connectors that bring things in, but also where the linguist, be they in-house or external, where they can just get on and do it, have the information, the context they need to hand. Yeah, absolutely. And that was actually my next question for you both, which is about how implementing localization technology. So that could be a TMS, it could also be leveraging machine translation, or, you know, nowadays we're talking a lot about AI in the industry. So how has actually implementing localization technology helped or even improved your localization process? Deborah, I'm looking at you first for this one.
No problem. Massive benefits here. I have to say it's a life-changing experience. It really helps the way you work. I have to say that I have worked in the past with different TMS before, and some of them are better than others, some of them are more efficient than others, and then you realize the moment that you find the right one, you realize how much time you're saving, how efficient it is, how productive it is. For us, the productivity has improved like more than 50%. Of course, you save money. You know, this is all, we are here, like, we work towards improvements, right? We always want to make sure that we are doing the best job as we can. And one of the main reasons, one of the main, you know, important things for us, it's also saving money, making sure that, you know, the translation memory is used as it should be. Then we have also the implementation of like different AI translation engines. Then on top of that, we have also like different features like this auto-populated content, meaning that when you upload the content, the target language, sorry, the source language in English, and then you want the target language to be translated, it's already like, you know, auto-populated, which means that you're leveraging the previous translations that you've done in the past. You're saving time, you're saving money, you're consistent with the vocabulary, with the terminology, with all the glossary that you have used in the past. And for me specifically, I'm not only taking care of marketing material, you know, like all the content that we have on the website. I also take care of Zendesk, the help center, UI, the product as well, and different people are using, different linguists are translating this content today. But because we have one consolidated TMS, you know, we make sure that we're using the same language and we're using consistency, which is super, super important for us, and I'm sure for everyone else here.
Yeah, that goes back to the scalability, right, that we talked about before. You can use different resources, but because you have those assets, right, brought to you by the technology that you implement, you can still then ensure the same quality and the consistency. Yeah. I'll come to you, Katie, with the same question as well. How, in your case, how's technology helping you make the best of your process today?
Yeah, all of what Deborah said, definitely being able to adapt your, all this, even just like something like project templates, using templated information to process projects, it's super important because that saves you a lot of time and headache from remembering, oh, should I use this translation memory or should I use this glossary instead? So just being able to have like a templated resource to be able to process the content that you want to deliver. That's super important. And then when it comes to machine translation or AI, it goes back to quality in my view. So you can decide how much you want to, for example, refine a translation, or is it machine translation as it is okay, or do you want to take it to the next step and post edit it? So designing different workflows and different processes around your goals, it's also something that we find very helpful in our processes. And then another thing that I've been enjoying in particular is also the ability to gather data, because going back to showing the importance and the relevance of localization, you can show how much surely how much you've spent, but also how much you've saved thanks to all the language assets or the implementation of machine translation and all of like this technology.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great point, and I have a question about that as well, which is actually about the data points that you monitor. So data is everything. That's how we can make informed decisions. That's how you can go to other stakeholders within your business, right, and say, hey, we're localization and we're arguing for, be it budget, be it other resources, right? So what are some of those data points that you measure as part of your localization of efforts? Be that to show the ROI, like Deborah, you had a great statistics, right, about 50% saving there. But yes, what are perhaps some others where you can really measure and show the success to your internal stakeholders? Don't know. Katie,
Deborah,
would you like to go first?
Oh, okay.
Or Deborah, yeah. I want to hear from both of you, so I don't mind who goes first.
Shall I go first?
Yes, please.
Go ahead.
No problem. We have so many different KPIs here at AppsFlyer, and depending on the content that we are localizing, we measure it in a different way. I'll give you a couple of examples. In the marketing department, we deal with so much content, so much content from PMM, growth, demand gen. We send out email notifications. Some of them are what we call escalations. We use Figma. It's very, very hectic and the volume is really high. So when it comes to emails, for example, the best way of measuring an email is like by checking the opening rate, right? That's one of our KPIs. When it comes to gated content, if we have a landing page with a form and people fill in the form and we receive the the contact details, that's another KPI for us, very, very important to understand how many subscriptions we got, how many people subscribe to a webinar or to a specific content that we wrote about. Then we also have, obviously, the website. We check the traffic every so often. We have an SEO team specialized on, we also work on the SEO for languages, and we check, what's the traffic like, how did we perform depending on, what type of campaigns we launch in specific periods of time. So this is like a way of measuring our marketing material. Now, when it comes to KB, to knowledge-based articles, this is actually very interesting because it's a very joint collaboration with So it's the KB department, the CSM, the customer success managers, and also the support team. Now, we can see the trends here as well. Obviously, we check also the traffic, how many people are reading the articles that we are localizing. We also compare it to the number of tickets that we receive. And then we can also understand, it's a very good KPI for us to understand, you know, if we get a lot of questions about a very specific topic and we don't have enough documentation in a specific language, then, you know, one plus one, you can already like do the maths here, right? So that's another way we are measuring that. And then by the end of the day, it's all about also asking for feedback from customers as well. We send out like surveys as well, you know, to understand whether, you know, we're missing anything, any specific content in a specific language. Brand reputation as well, you know, that's more for marketing related content. But yeah, it depends very much. This is a question that for each company, I'm sure like everyone will have a completely different answer. But for us, this is how we more or less like measure it. Funnily enough, we are an analytics company. What we do here, we measure data. So we should be like the best in doing that. I have to highlight here.
Absolutely. It's great that you mentioned also some things that can be directly tied back to, you know, where does the localization efforts pay off with the knowledge base, right? If there are gaps, well, you can solve that problem with localization. So that's another tick, right, for in the box for the team. Katie, is it a similar story for you over at Zendesk? Could you have other data points that you would consider, hey, this is what we really look at to kind of make sure we're on track?
From a software perspective, of course, we need to ensure that what we are delivering is resonates with the target audience, that it makes sense. So we look at we look at the amount of, for example, tickets that we would get from customers to maybe clarify some translations or adapt it to a better version of the language. We look at things as like this is from a linguistic point of view, but also from a functional point of view. So we collect data on how many functional issues are encountered within our product when running the test, both internally and with vendors. We track also how quickly those bugs, when encountered and reported to the development teams, are fixed, so the rate of fixing issues. And then in terms of other data point, we collect information on overall volume processed, because that's going to give us a good projection into how much we can handle, and potentially implementing the right technology or making the right strategic decisions. We could increase our bandwidth. Sorry, I couldn't think of it. And then yes, quality is a big thing, and quality goes from analyzing the quality of the row empty to checking on the quality of the post editing, and on top of that, testing the product in the UI.
Yeah, all very valid points. Yeah, thank you so much. I have one more thing also about what you do kind of with that data. So I'm thinking, how can you use the data points, use the quality, use, like you said, Katie, the argument about bandwidth, right? Or how much you're handling. How can you use that to really show the importance of the localization team within the wider company? Like, are there internal stakeholders you need to make sure you have on board so that you can get resources where necessary, or be it anything else about kind of improvements to your process? Which stakeholders do you need to have on your side in the company, and how do you get them on board? I'll come to you first, Katie, because you've just answered the last one, right, about the points you raised.
Yeah, well, I think it goes very high up, right? So you need to prove of your point, to like, you know, the level of vice presidents and, like, you know, bigger stakeholders that will need to look at the data, what's being delivered. And then, of course, if we increase by X amount, we will need another headcount or other resources, or we will need increased budget. Yeah, so I think it's something that needs to be proved at several layers within the company, and that unfortunately requires a little bit of time for approval and to actually show that it's a real need. But numbers always speak. So if you just show the revenue, show the amount of content processed, and then you show how much more it's coming, I think you've got your argument, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, perfect. And that's a great point. It's about tying it to, you know, also then revenue and what the perhaps KPIs or measured data points are in other areas of the business, and to show where this localization kind of complement that, or where does it contribute to this. Yeah, I see you nodding there as well, Deborah. Do you have a similar experience?
Everything. So I think everyone should be involved. Every single person in any company should know about localization. And this is where education and advocating comes into place, right? I think it's our job. It's only our responsibility to make sure that they understand what localization is, because people tend to underestimate the profession and think, you know, it's they don't really see the value, or they see the value but they don't know the effort behind it. So here I advocate a lot for education to make sure that everyone on every level within the company, because by the end of the day we are localizing most of the content that everyone is working on, not just on the marketing side. It's KB, it's things that they're reaching, everything reaches to our clients and customers and partners. So everyone should be involved here. This is a very important joint effort that has to be taken into consideration. And yes, and for me, education here is like the solution, or the way to handle this situation.
Great. That leads me, the word education leads me perfectly also on to the last question that I have for you, and then we can move on to the audience Q&A. But yeah, in terms of educating and advising, that's also something we aim to do with these webinars, is to share a bit of our knowledge and yeah, educate those who are joining the webinar. So if we imagine a company just starting out on their localization journey, that doesn't need to be specifically software, but if they're just starting out, what's some advice that you could perhaps give to them? It could be, you know, successes that you've had in the past, your own recipe for success, or it could also be pitfalls, any learnings of what not to do that you have collected over your years of experience. But any advice that you would give to somebody just starting out with the localization? Deborah, would you like to go first?
Sure. Do your research, a lot of research, understand the market first, have a plan, build a strategy, make sure that you understand like where you're getting into, because before you start thinking about, like, you know, budget and resources and what TMS to use and blah, 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 you know, the 3 pillars that I mentioned before, you need to make sure that you know that you're entering the right market, that it's going to be successful, not only be successful, that it's going to be profitable, right? That you're going to get some ROI like from it afterwards, right? So for me, research, understanding the market, making sure that you have enough information to continue, you know, the rest of the journey, because localization is not a one-time thing that you just worked on it like one project like for a few months and then you just like let it go and run by itself. It requires a lot of maintenance. It requires a lot of knowledge. It requires like a lot of professional people behind the scenes, like, you know, working on the operations, on the logistics, making sure that, you know, the TMS are in place. And then after that, of course, you know, build your budget, see how you want to spend it. It depends very much on each company. But I think that's the main thing that I would suggest to you know, people who are not very familiar with localization in the first place.
Great.
Well,
Yeah.
but one
Katie?
thing is, it requires a lot of time. It's not a one-time thing. But if you get the pieces right from the beginning, then that's really gonna pay off. So if you get the first steps right, and that could be understanding what market to enter, understanding what is your objective and the strategy that you need to follow, understanding how to measure that, and preparing your software, your whatever you're selling for other markets. So and that could be in terms of visual elements that need to be adapted and adaptable to other languages and cultures. It can be from a linguistic point of view, so using language that it's easy to localize and will not require too much effort to then adapt into other languages and cultures. And then one thing that I've learned at some point in my career is how generous this field is. So localization professionals are just very, very generous, I've found. So reach out. So like very often, if you don't know where to start, there will be loads of people that are going to be willing to lend you a hand and share their opinion. It can be just like 10 minutes, 15 minutes chat that it's going to maybe help you pivot on something that you found really, really difficult to solve yourself. Deborah was saying, we feel very alone. Maybe you told me at some point yesterday that you do feel really alone when you and I'm so lucky in my team. It was very well structured when I joined, and it's everything worked so well, and it was an easy task. But in my previous job, nobody knew what localization was. They knew that they needed translation of some sort, and they decided to label this role localization manager. But and it was a lot of effort. So I wish at that point I knew I could reach out to localization professionals and get a little bit of help. Of course, you need to do your research. It's not the people are going to solve your issues or your questions, but they're going to be really willing to help.
I really like that. I have to say something. It's very nice because I met Katie this week, and we had a chat as well before the this webinar. And I have to say that I always forget like how good it is to talk to other people in this industry, just to exchange ideas. We all can learn from each other, and I think networking here it's like super, super important. It's a very small it's a very niche and small industry. We are very few people that we are dedicated to this profession that we all of us, we're very passionate about, and we all have a lot of experience. So I really encourage people to, to be more open to networking and to make sure that we are like connected and even like to do more gatherings or on Zoom, unfortunately, because everyone is living in different parts of the world. But I really, really like what you said, Katie. And I'm hoping that we can continue this working friendly relationship here as well.
Definitely, likewise.
That's lovely, and I think that's the perfect message to also to give to somebody who is just setting out, is to know that there's an entire community there, and it's all about helping each other because we're looking out for each other's success. So absolutely, that's lovely words to finish on. Thank you so much for answering all my questions. I think at this point we're ready to go over and see if we have any questions that have come in from the audience. But thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Yes, I would just want to echo that. This has been fantastic. And we have a great list of questions from the audience. So just to kick it off, Olivia asks, she says, thank you all for your insight, and asks, what are some more examples for metrics a team might be able to use to prove ROI?
It depends very much on the company. It's very difficult to give you like a general answer here. I would need to understand what's the industry, what they're selling, what they're trying to achieve. I tried to give you an example of like, the way we measure it, because that's, what our product is about. I think nowadays is very, very good because the information is out there. You can go to go on Google and you can do a lot of research. And like I mentioned before, it's also very good to start like doing networking, maybe setting up like meetings with other people in the industry who can help, giving like some sort of like insights and ideas and to guide them through. But it's difficult to answer what else should be measured if I don't know the company. May I know where she works? What's her industry?
All I have is a first name here, so sorry.
Okay, no problem. But I welcome her to contact me on LinkedIn, and we can talk about it, and we can even like look at it together. I'll be happy to do that.
And I was going to add also from within the same company, I think it depends on what material you're looking at. Right? Marketing might measure it differently from product, from other areas, different areas use different ROIs.
Awesome. Next question, Maria asks, what would you say to those who say translation quality is not so important and doesn't impact company sales too much?
A polite version, please.
I'm holding my thoughts here. I think go ahead before I explode.
Well, it's not true. No, well, it's I think of course it does depend. You often hear that you need to adapt the effort to to what you're trying to achieve, because at the end of the day, it is true that some companies don't have endless budget and might not be they don't do it in the proper way, not because they don't want to, but rather because they have budget constraints, time constraints, resources constraints. So you can do your best with the tools that you have. So this could be the acceptable version. To those that say quality doesn't matter, that's just not right. Because it's just like if you're a page and in English and you find it full of spelling mistakes, weird capitalization, broken text, or just insulting language, it's not true that quality doesn't matter. Then of course you need to look at the resources you have and try to do the best you can with what you have. So that goes into, for example, prioritizing machine translation over machine translation, fast editing, or human translation, right? You can adapt what you're delivering, but quality is not important. That's not true.
Not to mention, sorry, I want to add something else. Not to mention that this is gonna, your reputation is going to be very, very, very damaged. And that's the last thing you want to cause your company. If the language is not accurate or it's not good enough, or even with spelling mistakes, that can cost you a sale. That also can encourage people not to use your platform, not to use it, not to think about your company as a trustworthy entity. And we're talking about like very serious stuff here. Now I'm going to be serious because this is a very soft spot for me, because I mean, I'm both a linguist and also a perfectionist, so maybe I'm not a good example here, but definitely like you have to bear in mind the quality is super duper important, because at some point it will hit you back, either on the sales or the reputation, the branding, people not trusting you. It's super, super important, and it shouldn't be not taken. It shouldn't be not considered, right? Does that make sense?
It does, yeah.
Fantastic. Next question is from Maria, who says, hey, Sophia, Deborah, and Ketty, thank you for a great panel discussion. What would be your tips for choosing the right TMS?
I mean, I think I won't answer that one, because obviously I'm slightly biased coming from Phrase, but yeah, I'll hand over to Ketty and Deborah on that one.
Quite briefly, I think it depends on your needs. So what I found really important in the past was laying out all of the needs that I had in terms of processes and in terms of project types, and the model that I was going to use. So the vendors versus internal linguists and so on. And then really creating almost a table with, this is what I need. What tool can you deliver that for me? So quite briefly, this is how I've approached it in the past.
So for me, when it comes to CAD tools themselves, I think like most of the TMS companies out there in the market, they offer more or less the same. So that's why for me, I didn't really focus. Of course, it has to be like, user friendly and have all the features that they're needed. But for me, the most important thing were the connectors. We specifically work with so many different connectors, and not all the TMS have support the connectors that we work with. So that was like the main factor for me to choose the one that we're working with today.
Another thing to consider.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Katie.
Another thing could be support, right? Because if you're not really experienced, you just know that you want to use a CAD tool or a TMS to improve your to speed up the operations. Maybe you want to consider a CAD tool or like a TMS system that will provide you with some level of support. So you're going to be guided, and you have good documentation out there, or good customer success managers or support team. But it really depends on the needs there.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I just wanted to add, echoing what you said. And I know I said I wouldn't answer the question, but one thing is also test it, right? Don't just purchase something that you haven't had the chance to try out with other tools that you work with, like Deborah mentioned, connectivity, and your process that you have in place. Make sure you test it out to avoid any bumps in the road later. So that's what I would say on that one.
Awesome. The top two questions that we have right now with the most likes are really related. So I'm just going to read this first one. Thanks for sharing the experience, Katie and Deborah. When measuring the localization team's KPI and success, how do you tell which part of the growth / sales numbers are directly contributed by the great localization quality, and which part is from the effort of the local business development team?
Can you repeat the question? It was a bit long, sorry.
Yes, I can, absolutely. The question is about how do you tell which part of the growth and sales numbers are directly contributed by localization, and which part is from the local business development team?
This is a very, very tricky question, and it's very difficult to differentiate, because how do you attribute, again, that's what we do in our company, attribution. How do you attribute that the success of localization is what's bringing revenue, right? Is that the question? I have to be very honest with you. It's not a very straightforward answer, and it's not so clear. We do know the value of localization. We know the results of localization and why it is needed. But sometimes it's very difficult to say that because we localize A, B, C, and D content, this is why we got, so many sales in a specific market. It's we're working on that. It's not so clear for us. And this is something that has always been like one of our challenges, like attributing the success of, the content that we are localizing with the success of, every specific region.
Fantastic. And okay, next question we have. How do you manage expectations when different departments and partners have differing opinions on what is good localized content? It can be hard to find a good middle ground when the content is very specialized. And this is coming from Jimmy, who is in the computer-assisted music industry. So just to repeat, differing opinions on what is good localized content.
Very good question. If I may, but one thing that comes to mind is that I think it's always very important to have somebody that could be your go-to person. That ultimately will be the final person that will have a say on it. Quality can be subjective. So there is an element of quality that you can, of course, it's objective and it's like mistakes or various form of issues. But expectations, I think, as I mentioned previously, expectation is part of quality sometimes as well. So I think having probably a language specialist that is assigned to that particular language and can own it, that could be a way to mediate quality issues or, well, or different opinions on quality.
Awesome. And last question we have for today comes from Lucille, who says, "Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for your contributions. What have you found most effective in getting localization at the forefront of everyone's mind in your company? As we know, it's sometimes hard to foster a localization first perspective in different departments. Keen to hear your insights."
Deborah, do you want to take this?
Say again, sorry.
Sure, absolutely, absolutely. What have you found most effective in getting localization at the forefront of everyone's mind in your company?
The most effective?
I think it goes back to what you were saying also about education, right, Deborah? Like, how do you argue the point? How do you put localization at the forefront and move it away from being an afterthought or at the end of the process? What's been your tactic, I guess, that worked the best in changing that perspective within your business?
So this is something that I think the main job, the main effort that you do is like at the very beginning. When you start in a new company, when people are not familiar with it, that's when you do a lot of, education and trying to make sure that everyone knows what localization is about. And then after that, like when you're already like settled in and when you already like have everything, consolidated and quite settled, then, it's less and less frequent that you need to do this type of job. So yeah, for me, it was mainly like education and having a lot of meetings with so many different stakeholders and making sure that they understand what we do and they understand our processes. So yeah.
And I guess it goes back to data as well, right? If you have an already established process, look at the data to show, I don't know, this percentage of our customers use it in other languages. And if you don't have that data because you've just started, look at opportunities. We could expand by this amount if we were market in these other, like if we were to market in this other market in this other language.
Absolutely. So to sum it up, then it's all data and education. So communicate about the data that you have. That sums it up quite nicely, I think. Okay. Do we have additional questions or did we manage to complete the list? We completed the level.
We've completed the level, so I'll just hand it back to you and thank you all so much for participating. This has been a super informative webinar. I have loved it.
Yeah. From my side also, thank you so much to those watching, but most importantly to you taking part, for answering our questions, for raising lots of important, valid points. It's been really interesting discussion with a lot of takeaways, I think, to mull over. So thank you so much to both of you and to everyone for joining us in the webinar today. It's now exactly on the hour as well. So that's another tick in the box for us, right? We can keep to time. We're so efficient in our process. Lovely. Yeah, I think that's everything. Thank you very much again from my side. It's been great having you, and have a wonderful rest of your day, everyone.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.